Something. Oh, there we
Hello,
are.
Vanessa.
Hi.
Welcome to Fresh Film Friday.
Thank you for having me. I'm so
Yeah.
delighted the film is back in Tacoma.
I know, it's exciting. Marley and I both saw it at the film festival. I mean, I saw it before,
All the
obviously.
cool people saw it at the film festival.
Yeah, so if you want to bring your friends and watch it again, we're playing it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Shall we start on the questions?
Yeah, we'll just get rolling. So we have to start with the most cliche question, of course. And that is, what sparked your original interest in this film and this topic?
It's a little bit of a long story, but I think the short answer is basically a couple of years ago, one of the subjects of my last film passed away. He was an unknown artist living outside of Paris, someone who likely very few people in the world had heard of. And he was actually sort of just on the cusp of getting the recognition for his work that he had sort of worked for his entire life when he got lung cancer and died. And I wrote to him like 24 newspapers around the world, trying to sort of just hold on to his legacy in some way. And the only paper that wrote me back was the New York Times, and they ran, Marguerite Fox ran a beautiful obituary on his work, and her ability to sort of encapsulate him so quickly and well in so few words just really amazed me. And sort of a corollary to that is that there were certain facts of his life that we were never able to figure out, and I couldn't really kind of get my head around the idea that in the span of a week that the facts of somebody's life could start to disappear, and that I just that much more appreciated the fact that obituaries were sort of something there to catch what we could before it was gone.
That's awesome. Being able to conduct interviews and produce a documentary at and about the New York Times seems like quite a feat. I know you had the connection with the original obituary, but how many days were you able to film in the offices, and what kind of access did you have?
It took a long time to sort of sort it all out. Between me sort of originally proposing the film and getting the okay to proceed took almost a year, I think. And from the get-go, I was pretty surgical in my request, because I knew if we asked for too much, it just wasn't going to be possible. And so we shot probably in the newsroom for 5 or 6 days. 3 of those were serious, verite, fly on the wall filming, and the other half was sort of B-roll pickup stuff. But we really had to trust our instincts and rely on a fair amount of good fortune and planning to be able to get what we needed in such sort of limited access and time. The interviews with the subjects were all done in their homes on their days off, though.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's not very much time filming at all. That's
No,
very
when you
impressive.
think about the ratio of 90 minutes to, we probably didn't shoot more than 60 or 70 hours of footage, which in this day and age is almost unheard of for docs.
Uh-huh.
We gathered about 1,000 hours of archival footage, though.
Well, not to spoil anything, but towards the end of the film, there's a bunch of video and film clips of all of the obituary subjects' lives, and that is just so interesting to me. I love that little scene there.
Thank you.
Yeah. How long did it take? This is a side question. How long did that take?
Oh, sure. That closing
to edit?
montage, which was edited just so brilliantly by the film's editor, Kristen Bai, was something that we had sort of been noodling over for probably more than 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But executing it took several months. I mean, it's about 30 seconds long, but in a sense it was almost our way of grabbing onto the volume of stuff that we had fallen in love with that we couldn't fit into the film. And so every little clip there, many of which runs for 2 frames, 3 frames, a fraction of a second, was stuff that we couldn't let go of and we wanted to include somehow.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool. Well, I have another question. How has you spent a lot of time focusing on obituaries and obituary writers. Has that kind of made you think any differently about your life and how you would like to be remembered for your accomplishments at all?
People ask me that question, and the disappointing answer is honestly no.
That's good. You're happy with what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when you're on a project, you're so outwardly focused, and it feels so odd to me that it almost feels counterintuitive that I would have ever turned the subject matter around on myself. Like it almost never even occurred to me to do that. But it did sort of redirect my focus almost from my own future and the rest of my life to the stuff that I've lived through and what happened before that. It almost turned me around 180 degrees, and I started to learn more about World War I and World War II and music in the 1950s and politics in the 1960s and the things people were doing. And so aside from myself, it sort of really opened my view on the 20th century.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Way more than my own fate.
Speaking of the 20th century, something that article or item that is so iconic directly attached to the 20th century is a typewriter. And my favorite scene of the film is the one about Manson Whitlock, who fixed typewriters and the romanticization? However you say
Let's
that word?
pretend that's a word.
Yeah. Of the sounds that the typewriters make. What's your favorite scene that you either directed or just that you like to watch in the film?
It sort of is constantly changing. And I mean, the stories in the film and the scenes all sort of become like your own children. It's just it's too hard to choose, and you chisel them so carefully for so long that sometimes I'll look at one and I'll be like, boy, that just, I've seen that one too many times, and other times I'll see it and I'll just be like, I'm so glad this is in the film. It's kind of hard to explain, but fortunately, everything that made it into the final cut, and there's so much that didn't, but everything that did had a long time to marinate and make sure that we were really in love with it.
Cool.
Nice. I just have one last question.
Okay.
Unless you got anything else
Oh, yeah, I do have another one. The obituarists, as they like to call themselves, mention it depends on the impact of a person's life if they write an obituary about them. Which obituary impacted yourself the most during this process?
Oh, boy. I'll have to sort of turn that one around again, too, and just say it's sort of the totality of when you read this volume of life stories, they do kind of come together in sort of a organic kind of inspiring way. And the ones that really impacted me were people who just overcame extraordinary adversity and often had never been heard of despite that fact for their entire life. Zelma Henderson, who's in the film, was the last surviving plaintiff in Brown versus Board of Education. She was a Topeka hairdresser. Tyrus Wong was a Chinese immigrant who, as an artist and an illustrator, set the look and feel of Disney's Bambi, but really never received due recognition. An incredible female journalist named Claire Hollingworth broke the story of World War II in 1939. Something that was, there was no internet back then. Breaking the story of a war was extraordinary. And so there are these people who, and these are people who I was like, gosh, they deserve an entire film about just them. Like, that's the other thing. When you go back and read the obituaries, so many of these lives deserve full dress treatment. What we did in our film was sort of these cursory glances on what we were able to, but the number of stories that I read by reading the obits, it's just extraordinary. So
awesome.
Any particular ones?
Yeah, I'd love to spend a day in the morgue just looking at all the articles that they've clipped out.
Yeah. I don't think you're alone on that one. I think that's a lot of people who would love to do that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, my last question is, or kind of comment and question. This film subject is a lot different than your previous Between the Folds.
Her documentary.
Yes,
Yeah.
your previous documentary. It's very different, but it's also very similar because you're chronicling the stories of this incredibly specific group of people. And what do you think draws you to those kinds of stories?
Well, sort of on the surface, it's really interesting to watch the process of people who do what they do so well, especially if it's something that you're not really sure of how it's done. Seeing an expert work their craft, I think, is endlessly fascinating and wonderful documentary material. I'm also really drawn, like, when something that people do is like a lens into the human experience in a way that is sort of counterintuitive. If there's metaphor, philosophical takeaways that you don't necessarily have to lay out, but that can be inferred through the edit process and the sort of the evolution of a philosophical idea that can be, conveyed through picture and music, just really fascinates me. And it's super hard to do, but I enjoy trying. And I think I've tried to make the past two films, sort of exist on a philosophical and metaphorical level. And it's probably what really gets me out of bed in the morning in order to do this stuff.
Yeah, I think you definitely succeeded in Obit. I still have to watch Between the Folds.
It's out there. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vanessa, for taking a chunk out of your time to sit down with us and answer a few questions.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing the film out west to Tacoma. It's so wonderful that it's going to be playing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
See you later.
Ciao.
Bye.